Underneath every confusing signal, every sudden silence, every moment where you feel something changed without explanation, there's a test, not a malicious one, not necessarily one she's aware she's giving, but a test nonetheless. You thought her affection would be linear, that consistency was a sign of maturity, that if you were good enough, attentive enough, kind enough, everything would stabilize. But instead, you found yourself on edge, second-guessing her tone, rereading old messages for clues, wondering what you said or didn't say that caused the shift. You started walking on eggshells, not because she told you to, but because you feared losing her more than you valued your own peace. This is where most men fall. It doesn't start with something big. It starts with a missed reply, a shorter message, a drop in energy. She used to respond in seconds. Now it takes hours. And something inside you panics. So you compensate. You try harder. You double text. You offer more. You become more available, more patient, more understanding. But the more you give, the less you get. And the less you get, the more you feel like you're losing your grip. What you don't realize is that this spiral didn't begin with her changing. It began with you needing certainty too soon. Women don't test you with logic. They test you with contrast. They show affection and then withdraw. Not because they're cruel, but because they need to feel what kind of man you become when things stop being easy, when your ego is threatened, when you don't get what you expect. Do you collapse? Do you chase? Do you start asking for clarity? Because every time you ask, "Are we okay?" what she hears is, "I need you to validate me because I can't validate myself." And the moment you do that, you lose. Not because vulnerability is bad, but because your timing is. You confuse emotional honesty with emotional exposure. And exposure, when not requested, is a form of weakness. It teaches her that she has the power to regulate your self-worth, that her silence equals your instability. And once she knows that, even subconsciously, she knows you are no longer a challenge, you are now a follower of her moods, her behaviors, her emotional cycles. The tragedy is, you meant well. You weren't being fake. You weren't playing games. You genuinely cared. But care without boundaries is suffocation. Presence without strength is noise. Love without structure is chaos. And instead of standing firm in who you are, you adjusted yourself to match her fluctuations. In doing so, you disappeared. Not to her, but to yourself. There's a moment every man can remember. The moment he gave too much, said too much, explained himself when he should have stayed silent, apologized for being affected, called when he should have walked away. And after that moment, something shifted. She became colder, more distant, not because she was evil, but because she saw that she could move you, control you, that her emotional pull had more power over you than your own self-respect. This is the unspoken test. She doesn't say, "Let me see if I can break him." She says without words, "Let me see if he still values himself when I'm not easy to love." Most men fail, not because they're weak, but because they confuse action with value. They think doing more will restore the warmth. That proximity will bring back affection. That proof of loyalty will melt the coldness. But the truth is brutal. When a woman pulls away, it is not your job to pull her back. It is your job to remain unmoved. It's in the silence that your character is measured. Not in what you say, but in what you don't. Not in what you give, but in what you withhold. Because women feel energy. They notice when your patience is actually desperation in disguise. When your kindness is an attempt to negotiate affection. When your compliments are really pleas for attention. And that's when you become repulsive. Not because you're not enough, but because you're too available, too readable, too emotionally exposed. The unpredictability that attracted her is now replaced by emotional compliance. She can predict you, and what's predictable is boring. So, how do you pass the test? Not by reacting, but by revealing nothing. You don't punish her for pulling away. You don't reward her by chasing harder. You simply adjust your emotional investment. If she steps back, you match it. Not out of spite, but out of self-respect. You're not trying to teach her a lesson. You're showing her who you are. A man who does not negotiate his worth based on someone else's mood swings. The moment you stop reacting, she has to start wondering why her usual tactics don't work, why you didn't panic, why you didn't chase, why you didn't beg. And that wonder reignites respect, because now she sees you as a man with a center, a man who can love deeply without losing himself. This is not a game, this is survival. You are not here to prove you're good enough. You're here to embody it, quietly, consistently, relentlessly. The test is not about your ability to please her. It's about your ability to remain sovereign, to hold your posture when everything in you wants to collapse. That's the kind of strength that's felt, not declared. That's the kind of presence that's magnetic, not performative. That's the kind of man she remembers when the world around her is full of echoes and emptiness. And now that you've seen what's beneath the test, there's something deeper waiting on the other side. The hardest part isn't the silence, it's the interpretation. What does it mean when she stops initiating, when her tone changes, when the compliments slow down and the laughter seems forced? Most men don't know how to read the moment without collapsing into assumptions. They default to guilt. What did I do wrong? And in asking that, they place themselves on trial, without evidence, without a jury, and without defense. But here's the truth most men miss. Not every withdrawal is a punishment. Some are calculated, some are subconscious. But almost all are emotional scans to see if the man in front of her has the strength to remain who he is, even when affection is withdrawn. This isn't manipulation, it's survival. You need to understand that emotional testing isn't always about control. It's often about clarity. Deep down, she wants to know, are you only strong when things are good, or do you remain grounded even when you feel unseen, unappreciated, or misunderstood? Because a man whose self-worth depends on validation is a man who can't be trusted when storms come. He'll crumble. He'll explain himself too much. He'll try to fix what isn't broken, and eventually he'll erode his own masculine core in exchange for emotional proximity. Women feel this, even when they can't articulate it. It's why the same woman who once melted in your presence now acts cold. It's why she'll praise a man who barely notices her and criticize the one who always shows up. It's not about cruelty. It's about calibration. The more certain she feels of your presence, the more she needs to feel your spine. Because too much availability kills polarity. It removes the spark. It strips away the edge. And what's left is comfort, but not desire. Familiarity, but not admiration. Here's where most men go wrong. They confuse consistency with predictability. Yes, be reliable, be grounded, but never become so emotionally legible that she can predict every move you'll make, that you'll always respond within 3 minutes, that you'll always double-check if she's okay, that you'll always apologize, even when you didn't cause the shift. Predictability may sound safe, but it breeds emotional numbness. What creates depth isn't just love, it's tension. It's not knowing exactly what you'll do next. It's the possibility that you might walk away if your core values are violated. That's the energy that gets tested. Let me give you a real-world example. A woman once told me she lost interest in a man not because he was unkind, but because he was too afraid of losing me. That fear showed up in his tone, in his texts, in his offers to fix things that weren't even broken. It made her feel like he had already lost himself inside the idea of her. And once a man dissolves into an idea, he's no longer a presence. He's a projection, and you can't respect what you can't feel. This is why the strongest response to an emotional test is not aggression. It's detachment, not indifference. Detachment. Detachment says, I see your change, and I don't need to chase clarity. I don't need to beg for answers. I remain who I am, whether you meet me here or disappear tomorrow. That presence is rare. It's unnerving. And paradoxically, it often makes her return. Not because she's afraid of losing you, but because she remembers that you never lost yourself. But this takes discipline. Discipline to not over-explain. Discipline to not seek closure that may never come. Discipline to stay silent when your instincts scream to reach out, because it's in the space between stimulus and response that your masculinity is forged. In that space, you either fall back into the boy who needs approval or rise into the man who approves of himself. What does this look like practically? It means when she becomes distant, you don't mirror her mood. But you don't overcompensate either. You continue your routine. You maintain your rhythm. You let her wander. Not to manipulate her, but to protect your emotional gravity. You become a man who doesn't chase energy shifts. He observes them. And in observing, you create tension. And in that tension, you reveal value. Because only men who have nothing to lose explain everything. The rest, they speak with presence. They make their absence felt. Women don't want emotional children. They don't want men who demand reassurance for every flicker of emotional inconsistency. They want leaders, not dictators, but men who can hold themselves when the room goes quiet, when the vibes shift, when the approval fades. And if you can't do that, no amount of love bombing, flowers, or poetic words will bring back her respect. Because once respect dies, attraction follows. That's why the test is never really about her. It's about you. Can you pass it without even reacting? Can you sense when the game begins, and instead of stepping onto the board, you stand still, not frozen, not passive, but rooted? Because the rooted man isn't pulled by her silence. He's not undone by a cold tone. He doesn't spiral because she's being different. He simply adapts, observes, adjusts his investment accordingly. And if she keeps testing, keeps pulling away, keeps trying to provoke a reaction, he knows she's not trying to break him. She's begging to find something unbreakable. And if she finds it in you, she'll never look away again. But this is only the beginning of how you handle emotional warfare without wounding yourself. Because once you learn to see the game, the next step is learning how to flip the board, to go from surviving her tests to shaping the dynamic itself. And that changes everything. There's a moment in every man's journey when he realizes he's not being punished, he's being measured. The quiet glances, the sudden emotional distance, the sarcastic remarks that cut a little deeper than usual. They're not accidents, they're signals, not of hatred or malice, but of curiosity. Because long before a woman falls in love, she runs experiments, and they're not spoken out loud, they're felt, intuitively, deeply, without warning. The purpose isn't to hurt you, it's to see what you're made of. Some men collapse at the first sign of discomfort. A missed call, and they panic. A colder tone, and they spiral. They try to fix everything, overcompensate, prove themselves. But what they don't realize is that this behavior turns emotional tension into emotional dependency. They stop being the man she was curious about and start becoming the man she controls through emotional triggers. You must understand, a test is not about what you do. It's about who you become when things don't go your way. Let's look at this in action. You take her out, she's engaged, smiling, everything flows. The next day, she's dry over text. She delays responses. She doesn't initiate. The insecure man immediately tries to restore harmony. He double texts. He overextends. He asks if she's okay. Not because he cares, but because he can't handle the unknown. He needs reassurance to validate his worth. And in doing so, he fails the test. Why? Because she didn't want more attention. She wanted more edge. She wanted to see if his confidence was situational or internal, if he could maintain composure without feedback, if he could stay grounded even when the warmth faded. And when he couldn't, He showed her something deeply unattractive, that his self-worth was tied to her reactions. Now let's flip the scenario. Same date, same great vibe, same colder energy the next day. But this time, the man feels the shift and doesn't chase it. He continues his day, doesn't text, doesn't react. He remains present in his own rhythm. He gives space, not out of strategy, but out of certainty. And in that space, something magical happens. She leans back in, not because she's afraid of losing him, but because she realizes he was never trying to trap her in the first place. This is the silent game of emotional strength. The man who survives emotional tests isn't the one who performs the best in comfort. It's the one who holds his frame in discomfort, who can sit in silence without explanation, who doesn't flinch when affection is withheld, because he knows his worth isn't up for negotiation. And that energy, calm, quiet, unbothered, is intoxicating. Now, this doesn't mean being cold or playing games. It means embodying a presence that doesn't shift based on external feedback. It means knowing that love given freely is worth far more than love earned through performance. And ironically, that's what makes her test even harder. Because when you don't react, she tries again, harder, sharper, quieter, more unpredictable. She might flirt with someone else in front of you. She might tell you a story about an ex who was more spontaneous. She might even say, "You've changed." But if you crack, if you raise your voice, get defensive, demand explanations, you've already lost, because you're no longer responding to her. You're reacting to her. And that's the difference between a man and a boy. So how do you win without playing? You hold your emotional line. If she's distant, you don't chase. If she's provoking, you don't bite. If she's testing, you don't fold. Instead, you communicate directly, without fear. You say things like, "I sense something shifted. If you want to talk, I'm open. If not, I'm not here to guess." That alone re-establishes the frame. It shows her you see the game, but refuse to be a pawn in it. And here's what's fascinating. Once you pass the test, the energy changes. Suddenly she's softer, more open, more receptive, because she feels safe. Not because you caved, but because you didn't. She knows she can test the foundation and it won't crack. That kind of steadiness is rare. And rare things are respected. There's a deeper layer here too. Many women are unconsciously seeking this kind of masculinity because they've lived too long in chaos, inconsistency, false strength. So they test, not because they want to control, but because they want to believe. They want to know the man in front of them won't mirror the instability of their past. And the only way to know is to shake the frame. That's why the ones who remain unshaken are unforgettable. They don't need to be the loudest, or the richest, or the best looking. They just need to be unfazed by emotional turbulence. Like a lighthouse in a storm, they don't chase ships, they guide them. And if the ship sails away, they don't collapse, they remain lit. That's what she's watching for, not your charm, not your muscles, not your playlist, but your emotional posture when the lights dim and the script goes off track. Because if you're still strong in the silence, still present in the confusion, still grounded when nothing makes sense, she knows you're not just a man, you're a leader. And leaders don't pass tests by begging, they pass them by being untestable. But knowing this isn't enough. In the next part, we'll break down how to create this posture in your daily life, through your habits, your language, your energy. Because this isn't just about surviving women's tests. It's about building a version of yourself who no longer fears being tested at all. Emotional strength is not forged in silence. It's forged in your internal dialogue. Most men assume that to pass a woman's emotional test, all they need to do is appear calm. Maintain a poker face, speak less, act aloof. But that's a surface-level tactic, and women can smell it. Because what you project on the outside means nothing if it's not aligned with the energy you're radiating from within. You can't fake self-respect. It either leaks through your voice, your posture, your boundaries, or the absence of it does. Take, for example, the man who's trying to play it cool when his woman pulls away emotionally. He waits hours to respond to her texts. He mimics her coldness. He mirrors her silence. On the surface, he thinks he's winning the game. But deep down, his mind is spiraling. He checks her social media constantly, replays past conversations, consults friends, Googles how to make her miss you. His outer behavior might pass for confidence, but his inner world is chaos. And she can feel it, because feminine intuition isn't fooled by performance. It reacts to frequency. That's why true power doesn't begin with what you do. It begins with what you believe. If you believe you are unworthy without her attention, you'll act in fear the moment she withdraws it. If you believe love must be earned through constant validation, you'll overextend yourself in every disagreement. And if you believe that losing her would destroy you, you will negotiate your masculinity away piece by piece just to avoid abandonment. This is the invisible warfare of emotional testing. It's not a battlefield you fight on with words. It's a battleground of energy. So how do you prepare for it? You stop trying to be the man she wants and start becoming the man you respect. This shift changes everything. You no longer mold your behavior based on her moods. You no longer shapeshift to stay likable. You no longer tiptoe around discomfort. Instead, you root yourself in principle. You decide what kind of man you are, what you tolerate, what you expect, what you refuse, and then you live it unapologetically. And here's the paradox. The moment you stop trying to pass her test is the moment you start passing it. Because women don't test men to break them. They test men to find them, to uncover what lies beneath the persona, to challenge your emotional structure, to see if the man you present is the man you actually are. And if you're incongruent, if your energy says, "I need you," but your words say, "I'm fine," she will expose that weakness every time. Let's bring this into real life. A woman gets distant. She stops saying, "I love you." She delays seeing you. The insecure man rushes in, trying to fix, solve, and understand. He interprets her pullback as a threat. He takes it personally. He starts doing more, buying gifts, planning dates, over-explaining his love. But he's not connecting, he's compensating, and that overcompensation becomes repellent. Now imagine another man, same woman, same emotional distance, but he doesn't chase, he doesn't interrogate, he doesn't project. He simply says, "If something's on your mind, I'm here to talk. If not, I'll give you space." Then he goes on with his day, fully. Not half present, not checking his phone, but living. And that energy, the rare energy of non-attachment, shakes her because it forces her to see him clearly outside of her emotional grip. This doesn't mean becoming cold or indifferent, it means becoming secure. Your security is your magnetism. Your groundedness is your authority. And when you radiate emotional independence, she doesn't feel abandoned. She feels safe. Safe to return without fear of smothering. Safe to open without pressure. Safe to test you without breaking you. But what if she keeps testing? Good. The most magnetic men in the world are tested the most because they have the most value to confirm. A woman who sees greatness in you will poke at it, not to destroy it, but to see if it's real. So don't resent the test. Don't resist the silence. Don't collapse in the confusion. Anchor yourself. Observe. Lead. And remember, leadership doesn't mean dominance. It means clarity, stability, purpose. When you lead emotionally, you're not reactive, you're responsive. You don't seek approval, you embody truth. You don't guess her emotions, you listen without fear. And when you respond from that place, you start to shift her energy too. Suddenly, she's not cold. She's reflective. She's not testing to provoke you. She's testing to understand herself in your presence. And the more composed you remain, the more space she has to drop the games entirely. Because games only exist where there's uncertainty. When you bring certainty, the game ends. But you can't borrow this power from a script, a book, or a video. You must become it. And the only way to become it is through emotional conditioning. That's what we'll uncover in the next part. Because if you've ever felt drained, confused, or manipulated by emotional interactions, it's not because women are too complex. It's because no one ever taught you how to remain sovereign in the storm. But once you learn to master your emotional energy, you stop being the one who gets tested and become the one who sets the standard. There comes a moment in every man's life when he realizes that emotional strength isn't just about endurance. It's about precision. It's not enough to survive the emotional storms a woman brings. You have to know exactly why they come, how to interpret them, and most importantly, how to respond in a way that reinforces, not weakens, your value. The average man thinks he's failing because she's unpredictable, that her shifting moods are impossible to understand. But here's the truth, no one tells you. Her unpredictability isn't chaos. It's a system, and if you can learn to read it, you'll stop feeling confused and start gaining control. The mistake most men make is trying to use logic in an emotional test. She withdraws, and you ask why. She criticizes, and you defend yourself. She challenges your behavior, and you rush to explain. But these responses, though they feel natural, signal weakness. Because they're reactive, because they reveal you're still trying to get her to validate you, still trying to win her approval. But emotional leadership isn't about winning. It's about setting the tone, guiding the dynamic, becoming the anchor that doesn't move no matter how hard the waves hit. And to do that, you have to master one of the most difficult skills in male psychology, the power of stillness. Stillness is not passivity. It's the calm, grounded silence that communicates confidence without desperation. It's being able to listen without defending, to observe without reacting, to stand your ground when your emotions want to pull you off center. That's what separates boys from men, not muscles, not money, stillness. Let's talk about what this looks like in action. She gets distant for no apparent reason. Instead of chasing, questioning, or flooding her with attention, you let her be. You continue showing up in your life. You keep your routine. You stay engaged with your purpose. When she returns, and she will, you don't scold her, guilt her, or play victim. You greet her with openness, not attachment. That's emotional strength. You didn't punish her, but you didn't collapse either. You stayed grounded. Now imagine she throws an emotional test, sarcasm, jealousy, or some emotional jab. Instead of defending yourself or snapping back, you smile and say something like, "You're funny when you're nervous." It's playful. It disarms her. But more importantly, it reframes the interaction. You're not reacting to her frame. You're leading it. You're not playing defense. You're setting the tone. That's what she's actually looking for. Someone who can handle her intensity without flinching. Because make no mistake, women don't want to dominate men. They want to trust men. But they can't trust a man who crumbles under pressure, who seeks emotional safety in the woman herself, who hands over the power to the relationship instead of anchoring it inside his identity. And this is where most men fail. They think if they're kind enough, attentive enough, available enough, they'll win her heart. But in doing so, they become predictable, overly accommodating, and ultimately invisible. Because nothing kills attraction faster than a man who needs to be liked to feel whole. So what's the antidote? Stop chasing validation. Start building presence. Presence is what makes a man unforgettable. It's the rare energy that enters a room and shifts the air. It's calm, not cold, grounded, not passive, assertive, not aggressive. And it can't be faked. It's something that comes from within, when you finally stop needing her approval to feel enough. You develop this presence by returning to yourself, by making your mission bigger than her moods. By understanding that love isn't about losing yourself to win someone. It's about revealing your strength to attract the right energy. And yes, some women will test you even harder when they feel that shift, because your strength activates their fear of losing control. But instead of taking it personally, take it as confirmation. confirmation that your energy is no longer available for manipulation, that you've exited the boyish pattern of emotional submission, that you're no longer trying to be chosen, but are choosing who earns access to your emotional world. Now, this doesn't mean becoming a robot. It doesn't mean shutting down or refusing to be vulnerable. It means choosing when to open and with whom. It means protecting your peace like it's sacred, because it is. In the end, every emotional test is an invitation, not to win her, but to find you, to become more solid, more centered, more free. You pass these tests not by mastering her, but by mastering yourself. And once you do, you'll notice something unexpected. The testing stops, not because women change, but because your energy tells a different story now, one that doesn't invite chaos, one that no longer entertains drama, one that commands respect, not with force, but with unshakable presence. And suddenly, women don't want to test you, they want to follow you. That's the power of being a man who sees the game and refuses to play it from weakness.